Sergeant Lawrence Ward stared at his last 3 nutrient bars and calculated survival odds as the alien girl lay dying at his feet, her iridescent skin dulled by starvation. His medical scanner hummed softly in the darkness of the collapsed cultural center, its display illuminating his dirt-streaked face with harsh blue light. The readings weren't good. Severe malnutrition, critical dehydration, advanced muscle deterioration. The Ventaxian female had less than 48 hours left. Lawrence ran a hand through his sweat-matted hair, feeling the grit of pulverized concrete caught in it. 4 days separated from his unit after the draconian artillery strike had turned this sector of Ventax City into rubble. 5 more days of marching through enemy territory to reach the nearest coalition outpost if he was lucky. The Ventaxian stirred, her large compound eyes reflecting what little light penetrated through the ruins above. She flinched when she saw Lawrence, attempting to retreat further into the small pocket created by fallen support beams. "I won't hurt you," Lawrence said, lowering his rifle to the ground. He kept his movements slow, deliberate, the way he'd been trained to approach civilian casualties during his 12 years as a combat medic. The scanner in his hand continued its assessment. Female, approximately 19 in human equivalent years, no immediate injuries beyond the starvation. 11 days without proper nutrition. Her body had already consumed nearly all fat reserves and had begun breaking down muscle tissue for energy. "Petra," she whispered, tapping her chest weakly. "Name, Petra." Lawrence nodded. "Sergeant Lawrence Ward, 87th Expeditionary Unit, Human Coalition Forces." The ruins of Ventax City groaned around them as another building collapsed somewhere in the distance. This border world of Eris IV had become the front line in humanity's war against the Draconian Empire 3 years ago. The Ventaxians, with their slender bodies and shimmering skin, had become reluctant allies or collateral damage, depending on who you asked. Petra's eyes darted to the nutrient bars visible in Lawrence's open pack. Her thin fingers trembled against the debris-strewn floor. Lawrence knew the standing orders. Military supplies were not to be shared with local populations due to critical shortages affecting coalition forces. It was a logical order, no sense in soldiers starving to death when they were the ones fighting to liberate these worlds. He felt the weight of his damaged communication unit in his side pocket. No way to call for extraction or resupply. No way to get help for either of them. Lawrence unclipped his canteen and removed a water purification tablet, dissolving it in the last quarter of his water. He held it to Petra's cracked lips. "Refugee caravan," she managed between sips. "Attacked 11 days ago. Family, all gone." The decision formed in Lawrence's mind not as a dramatic moment of heroism, but as the simple arithmetic of humanity. He had trained to save lives. That's what combat medics did, regardless of species. Lawrence broke 1 nutrient bar in half, then thought better of it. She needed more than half if she was going to survive. He placed all 3 bars beside her. "Eat slowly," he instructed. "Too fast and your body will reject it." Petra's compound eyes widened. "But you, I'll manage," Lawrence said, checking his rifle's charge and gathering his remaining supplies. He didn't mention that his sacrifice likely meant his own death. The rations had been his final lifeline through draconian territory. As Petra carefully nibbled the first nutrient bar, Lawrence studied his outdated physical map. 5 days to the outpost if the draconians hadn't moved their lines. 5 days with no food. But as he watched life slowly returning to Petra's face, he knew some choices transcended military logic or even self-preservation. The war had taken enough already. At least this one life might continue. Lawrence checked his rifle one more time before slinging it across his back. With no food left, he'd need to rely on his training and whatever he could scavenge to survive the journey. His stomach already ached with emptiness, but watching Petra carefully consume small bites of the nutrient bar made the decision worth it. "Rest now," he said, adjusting his pack. "I'll secure the perimeter." The cultural center's collapsed architecture created a maze of partially standing walls and fallen support beams. Lawrence navigated through the debris, identifying potential escape routes and defensive position habits drilled into him through years of combat experience. He found a vantage point that offered a clear view of the surrounding streets while keeping him concealed from aerial surveillance. Draconian patrols had increased in this sector over the past week. The artillery barrage that separated him from his unit wasn't random, it was part of a coordinated push to secure the eastern quadrant of Ventax City. Lawrence settled into his observation position and pulled out his binoculars. The city stretched before him, a testament to destruction. Once-elegant spires reduced to jagged stumps, gardens transformed into craters, homes converted to rubble. When he returned to their shelter, Petra had curled into a tight ball, her exoskeleton plates overlapping defensively even in sleep. Lawrence set up his medical scanner to monitor her vitals and settled against a wall, rifle across his lap. Sleep came in fitful bursts. By morning, Petra's condition had deteriorated again. The nutrient bars had provided temporary relief, but her body needed more than emergency rations. Lawrence activated his scanner, frowning at the readings. Her metabolic rate had increased, her body was burning through nutrients faster than expected. "Water," he said, helping her sit up. He used his last purification tablet to treat a small amount collected from a leaking pipe. Petra's hands trembled as she accepted the canteen. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice still weak but clearer than the previous day. Lawrence nodded and checked his supplies. His medical kit contained basic antibiotics, pain relievers, and wound dressings, nothing designed specifically for Ventaxian physiology. He selected a general-purpose hydration solution and carefully measured a dose into the canteen water. "Drink slowly," he instructed, mimicking the action. "Medicine." Petra's compound eyes studied him, multifaceted surfaces reflecting his image like fractured mirrors. She took a cautious sip, then grimaced at the taste. "Bad," she said, but continued drinking. Over the next 3 days, Lawrence established a routine. Morning and evening reconnaissance of the surrounding area, followed by medical checks on Petra. His translator unit, damaged but partially functional, helped bridge their communication gap. He taught her basic coalition military hand signal, saw clear, danger, move, hide, while she attempted to teach him Ventaxian healing phrases. "Kelnath Vori," she repeated, placing her palm over her chest. "Kelnath Vori," Lawrence echoed. "What does it mean?" "Life. Inside," she translated haltingly. Healer words for strength. By the 3rd day, Petra could sit up unassisted for longer periods. Her iridescent skin, previously dull and flaking, had regained a subtle luminescence. Lawrence had carefully rationed his medical supplies, creating nutrient-rich solutions from his remaining hydration tablets. His own hunger had become a constant companion, a hollow ache that occasionally sent spots dancing across his vision. "You need eat," Petra said on the evening of the 3rd day, her compound eyes tracking his movements as he checked the perimeter markers he'd set up. "I'm fine," Lawrence replied automatically, though his hands shook slightly as he adjusted his scanner. Petra made a clicking sound that his damaged translator couldn't interpret. She reached toward him, her slender fingers gesturing at his face. "No, not fine, hungry." Lawrence didn't argue. His combat nutrition training outlined survival timelines. 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. He was only on day 3 without food, but the physical exertion of caring for Petra and maintaining security had accelerated his body's demands. Their conversation halted at the distinctive whine of engines overhead. Lawrence immediately extinguished their small light and moved to the observation point he'd established near a collapsed wall. The silhouette of a draconian scout ship cut across the night sky, its searchlights sweeping methodically through the ruins. "Don't move," he whispered, though Petra had already frozen in place, her natural instincts taking over. The scout ship circled once, twice, then began a more deliberate pattern. They were searching for something specific. Lawrence's mind raced through possibilities as they detected his reconnaissance movements. Were they tracking coalition stragglers? He crawled back to his pack and retrieved his damaged communication unit. Though useless for contacting his unit, the power cells remained functional. Lawrence quickly disassembled the device, separating the heating element used for emergency signaling. "What doing?" Petra whispered, watching him work. "Creating a distraction," he explained, setting the timing mechanism on the power cell. He repeated the process with 2 more cells, creating 3 separate devices. Moving with practiced stealth, Lawrence placed the first device in a building 200 meters east of their position. He activated it, setting the heat signature to pulse at irregular intervals, mimicking a human biosignature. The second and third devices he positioned to the north and south, creating a triangle of false signals. When he returned, the draconian ship had already diverted toward the eastern signature. Lawrence watched through his binoculars as the ship hovered over the decoy location, scanners sweeping the area. "They'll realize it's a trick eventually," he told Petra. "We need to move soon." On the morning of the 4th day, Lawrence spotted the scout ship returning, this time with a more comprehensive search pattern. Their time had run out. "We need to leave," he said, gathering their limited supplies. "Can you stand?" Petra struggled to her feet, swaying slightly but remaining upright. Her compound eyes focused on his face, concern evident in their movements. "Where go?" she asked. Lawrence consulted his map. Coalition base at Keldor Ridge, 82 kilometers west. Petra's fingers traced the route on the map, stopping at the narrowest section. "Valley of Ash," she said, her voice dropping. "Death Place." "It's our only option," Lawrence explained. "Draconian patrols have the main roads blocked. The valley's toxicity levels have dropped enough for brief passage." He began searching the cultural center more thoroughly, looking for anything useful they might have missed. Petra followed, moving slowly but steadily. In what appeared to have been an administrative section, Lawrence discovered a hidden storage compartment beneath a fallen display case. "Here," he called, lifting the sealed container. His scanner confirmed its contents: preserved Ventaxian food packets, emergency supplies intended for the center's staff. Petra's eyes widened. She carefully opened one packet and smelled its contents. Food. Good food. Lawrence continued searching and found a smaller container filled with dried plants and sealed vials. Petra immediately recognized them, her hands moving with newfound energy as she sorted through the herbs. "Medicine," she said excitedly. "Ventaxian medicine. I was learning before war." She gestured to herself. "Medical student." Lawrence watched as she expertly combined several herbs into a paste, adding drops from 2 different vials. The mixture emitted a sharp, clean scent that reminded him of antiseptic. "For you," she said, pointing to the shrapnel wound on his arm that he'd hastily bandaged days ago. Lawrence hesitated, then removed the bandage, revealing an angry red gash surrounded by inflamed skin. Petra applied the salve with gentle precision. The burning sensation that had plagued him for days disappeared almost immediately, replaced by a cooling numbness. His scanner confirmed what he felt: accelerated tissue regeneration at the site. "Thank you," he said, genuinely surprised at the effectiveness. While Petra consumed a small portion of the Ventaxian food, Lawrence turned his attention to their next challenge. His combat suit included basic filtration for hazardous environments, but Petra had no protection for the Valley of Ash. Using components from his damaged equipment and materials salvaged from the cultural center, Lawrence constructed a makeshift filtration mask. He calibrated it using his medical scanner's data on Ventaxian respiratory systems, a subject covered during his combat medic training. The finished device looked crude but functional. 4 hours protection, he explained, demonstrating how to secure it. We'll need to move quickly through the worst areas. By dawn on the 5th day, they prepared to leave their shelter. Lawrence fashioned a support harness from his tactical gear, allowing him to help bear Petra's weight when necessary. She stood taller now, her posture straighter, though still far too thin. "Ready?" he asked, adjusting his rifle and pack. Petra secured her improvised mask and nodded. "Ready." Together they stepped out from the ruins of the cultural center, heading west toward the Valley of Ash. Lawrence supported Petra with one arm while keeping his rifle ready with the other. Above them, the twin suns of Eris IV broke through the dust-choked atmosphere, casting long shadows across the devastated city. Lawrence and Petra moved across the ruined landscape, their silhouettes merging with the shadows of devastated buildings. The Valley of Ash loomed ahead, a corridor of desolation stretching between jagged rock formations. Gray particulates hung in the air, obscuring visibility and lending an otherworldly quality to the terrain. "Valley dangerous," Petra said, her compound eyes fixed on the hazy passage ahead. "Toxins from bombs, factory chemicals." Lawrence nodded, checking his scanner. "Readings show reduced levels from 3 months ago. Brief passage is possible." He adjusted Petra's makeshift filtration mask, testing the seals around her facial plates. 4 hours protection. We move quickly. They entered the valley as the first sun crested the horizon. The ground beneath their feet changed from rubble to a fine, powdery substance that kicked up with each step. Lawrence maintained a steady pace, one arm supporting Petra while his eyes constantly scanned for threats. The mask he'd constructed for her seemed to function properly, her breathing steady and unhindered. 6 hours into their trek, Lawrence's scanner began emitting a soft warning tone. He checked the readings and felt his stomach tighten. The primary filter in Petra's mask was degrading far faster than his calculations had predicted. The caustic atmosphere was eating through the salvaged components. "Stop," he commanded, guiding Petra to a small outcropping that provided minimal shelter. He examined the mask, his fingers working methodically around the seal points. "Problem?" Petra asked, her voice muffled. Lawrence kept his expression neutral as he checked his scanner again. "Filter degradation, faster than expected." He ran diagnostics on both their filtration systems. The numbers confirmed his fears. Petra had approximately 20 minutes before toxic exposure would reach critical levels. 4 kilometers remained before they would exit the valley. Even at their best pace, they couldn't cover that distance before her mask failed completely. Lawrence considered their options, fingers tapping against his rifle as he thought. He made his decision in seconds. "Hold still," he instructed, releasing the clasps on his combat suit's chest plate. The piece contained his primary atmospheric filtration system, far superior to the makeshift device he'd created for Petra. "What doing?" she asked, watching as he removed the vital component. "Upgrading your protection." Lawrence quickly reconfigured the connectors, adjusting the harness to fit Petra's smaller frame. His helmet would provide him with backup filtration sufficient for minimal protection but not designed for prolonged Valley of Ash exposure. "No," Petra protested as she realized his intention. "Your protection, your physiology is more vulnerable to these toxins." Lawrence cut her off, already attaching the system to her mask. "My backup filters will suffice." The lie came easily. His backup system would buy him time, nothing more. He secured the chest plate over Petra's torso, tightening the straps and checking the seal integrity. The filtration unit hummed to life, providing her with clean, filtered air. "We need to keep moving," he said, helping her to her feet. "Maintain pace." They resumed their journey, Lawrence now navigating primarily with his tactical compass. An hour later, he felt the first burn in his lungs, a persistent tickle that developed into a ragged cough. The backup filters were beginning to saturate. "Lawrence," Petra said, noticing his deteriorating condition. "Take back, keep moving," he interrupted, his voice hoarse. He checked his compass again, 2 kilometers remained. By the 8th hour in the valley, visible chemical burns had formed on Lawrence's exposed neck and hands where caustic particles had settled on his skin. His vision blurred periodically, forcing him to rely more heavily on his compass. Each breath became a conscious effort. "Please," Petra tried again, reaching for the clasps of the filtration system. "Take back." Lawrence firmly pushed her hand number away. "No, keep walking." The final kilometer seemed endless. Lawrence's muscles burned with exertion, his lungs screaming for clean air. The toxins had infiltrated his helmet's backup filters, leaving him breathing an increasingly poisonous mixture. He focused solely on the compass, 1 foot in front of the other, Petra's weight against his side the only constant. When they finally emerged from the valley 9 hours after entering, Lawrence managed 3 more steps before his legs gave out. He collapsed to his knees, then forward onto the rocky ground. His medical scanner, still functioning, displayed alarming readings, dangerous levels of chemical infiltration in his bloodstream, early signs of neurological damage. Petra removed his helmet, her movements gentle but urgent. Lawrence tried to speak, but could only produce a ragged cough that spattered blood onto the ground. "Rest," she said, her voice sounding distant to his failing senses. "I help." Consciousness faded, replaced by fragmented awareness, Petra's form moving around him, the scent of crushed vegetation, cool moisture on his burning skin, liquid being carefully poured between his lips, then darkness. Lawrence awoke to filtered sunlight. He blinked, taking inventory of his body. The burning in his lungs had subsided to a dull ache. The chemical burns on his skin felt cool, covered with a greenish paste. He tried to sit up. "No move," Petra said, appearing at his side. "Still healing." Lawrence took in their surroundings. They were in a small shelter constructed from branches and his emergency thermal blanket. His equipment had been arranged methodically around them, including a perimeter of early warning devices fashioned from his damaged communication unit parts. "How long?" he asked, his voice a harsh whisper. 12 hours, Petra replied, offering him a cup containing a steaming liquid. "Drink. Medicine." Lawrence accepted the tea, noting the familiar scent of the herbs they had salvaged from the cultural center. His scanner lay beside him, and he checked the readings with his free hand. The toxin levels in his bloodstream had reduced by approximately 60%, far more effective than his own medical supplies would have been. "You made this?" he asked, indicating the poultice on his burns. Petra nodded. "Plants here. Good for toxins, I know them." She gestured to herself. "Medical training." Lawrence finished the tea, feeling strength gradually returning to his limbs. "Thank you." Their moment of respite was interrupted by a distinctive electronic hum overhead. Lawrence recognized it immediately, a coalition reconnaissance drone. He reached for his emergency beacon, activating it with practiced movements. The signal pulsed outward, but the drone's flight path carried it beyond range before proper contact could be established. "Coalition territory," Lawrence said, checking his compass. 2 days' march from here. They rested through the night, Lawrence's condition improving with each dose of Petra's Ventaxian remedies. By morning he could stand without assistance, though his breathing remained labored. As they prepared to continue their journey, Lawrence's partially repaired comm unit picked up fragmented transmissions. He adjusted the frequencies, listening intently to the encoded bursts. "Draconian communications," he explained to Petra. "Mechanized battalion conducting sweeping operations between us and the coalition base." Further decoding revealed more troubling information. They've deployed hunter-killer drones with thermal, calibrated for both human and Ventaxian biosignatures. He looked at Petra. "They're searching specifically for survivors from your refugee caravan." Lawrence studied his tactical map. "We need to adjust our route, north toward the Scythian mountains." He traced the path with his finger, adds 3 days but avoids draconian search patterns. Petra examined the map, then pointed to a different location. Helios Canyon, southwest, 1 day, research outpost. Research outpost. Lawrence looked where she indicated. Xenobotanical research, abandoned early in war. Petra's compound eyes reflected the morning light. Food growing there, communication equipment maybe. Lawrence considered their supplies. The additional days to the mountains would stretch their resources beyond sustainable limits, particularly with both of them requiring extra nutrition to recover. "You've been there?" he asked. "Once, with mentor, medical training visit." Petra traced the route on the map. Hydroponics sections, automated systems. Lawrence weighed their options. The direct route to the coalition base was compromised. The mountain route would take too long with their limited supplies. The research outpost offered their best chance. Helios Canyon, he decided, repacking their gear. 1 day southwest. They traveled cautiously through increasingly mountainous terrain, where the effects of orbital bombardment remained starkly visible. Massive craters disrupted the landscape, some edges vitrified into glass-like surfaces. Lawrence's tactical training kept them to covered routes, while Petra's knowledge of native terrain helped identify paths that wouldn't leave obvious tracks. By nightfall on their 9th day since leaving Ventax City, they reached the ridge overlooking Helios Canyon. Lawrence raised his tactical binoculars, studying the research outpost below a collection of dome structures partially built into the canyon wall. No movement, no lights, no signs of draconian presence. "Appears abandoned," he said, adjusting the binoculars settings. No visible power signatures. As darkness settled completely, Lawrence activated his scanner's deep-range function. After several moments, the device detected faint energy readings from the facility's lower levels. "Some systems still operational," he reported, showing Petra the readings. "Backup power, possibly." They watched the facility in silence, formulating their approach. The darkness provided cover but also concealed potential threats. Lawrence checked his rifle's charge and ensured Petra's makeshift weapon was functional. "We descend under cover of darkness," he decided. "Approach from the western side where the shadow is deepest." Petra nodded, her compound eyes better adapted to the low light conditions. "I guide first part, you follow." Lawrence took one final scan of the valley before they began their descent. If the facility contained operational systems, it represented their best hope for survival in the increasingly hostile territory caught between the warring factions. If not, they would be trapped in a deadened canyon with draconian forces closing in from all sides. "Let's move," he said, shouldering his pack and beginning the careful climb down toward the silent research outpost below. The descent into Helios Canyon demanded precision. Lawrence led the way down the western face, where shadows gathered thickest beneath the overhanging rock. Each foothold required careful testing. Loose shale threatened to cascade downward, announcing their presence to any draconian patrols. "Stop," Petra whispered, extending her arm across Lawrence's chest. He froze instantly, trusting her superior night vision. She pointed to a narrow path winding between 2 jagged rock formations. "Natural cover," she explained. "Less exposed." Lawrence nodded, adjusting their route. The 5 interconnected domes of the research outpost grew more distinct as they descended. Moonlight reflected off sections of intact transparent steel, while other areas remained in shadow where structural damage had compromised the facility. Blast patterns consistent with draconian pulse weapons marked the exterior walls, and the primary dome's entrance had completely collapsed. Lawrence's scanner vibrated against his wrist. He raised it, studying the readout with narrowed eyes. "Heat signatures," he muttered. "Eastern dome." Petra tilted her head. "Occupation, unclear." Lawrence checked his rifle charge, then pointed to a rocky outcropping 30 meters from the facility's perimeter fence. "We observe first." They established a concealed position behind weather-worn boulders. Lawrence deployed his tactical scope, scanning methodically across each dome while Petra monitored their perimeter. 3 hours passed with no movement detected beyond the strange heat fluctuations in the eastern section. No draconian presence, Lawrence concluded, lowering his scope. But something's active inside. Petra had ventured slightly from their position, examining plants growing along the facility's fence line. Her fingers moved delicately among the foliage, selecting specific specimens. Ventaxian plants, she explained, returning with a handful of star-shaped leaves and tuberous roots. From hydroponics, adapted outside. She crushed the leaves between her palms, extracting a pale yellow liquid that she mixed with water from their canteen. The liquid turned amber. "Drink," she instructed, offering it to Lawrence. "Help toxins." Lawrence drank without hesitation. The liquid tasted bitter yet carried undertones of something like citrus. Almost immediately, he felt the persistent ache in his lungs ease. "Maintenance access," he said, pointing to a recessed panel in the canyon wall beside the westernmost dome. "Looks intact. Our entry point." They approached the access tunnel using natural rock formations as cover. Lawrence scanned the entryway for security measures while Petra kept watch. The maintenance hatch yielded to manual override after Lawrence bypassed its circuitry. "Stay behind me," Lawrence instructed, drawing his sidearm as the hatch slid open. The tunnel beyond was narrow, barely wide enough for Lawrence's shoulders. He activated his tactical light, illuminating dull metal walls lined with conduits and junction boxes. The air inside smelled stale but breathable. They progressed slowly, Lawrence's weapon ready as they navigated through service corridors that branched throughout the facility. Emergency lighting functioned at minimal capacity, creating pulsing pools of bluish illumination that gave the abandoned hallways an eerie quality. In the main corridor, evidence of hasty evacuation surrounded them: scattered personal items, dropped data pads, a single shoe. Lawrence paused at a laboratory doorway, surveying the room beyond. Microscopes remained positioned over sample trays, diagnostic equipment still displayed final readings, plants in various stages of cultivation sat withering in their grow chambers. 10 months, Petra observed, picking up a Ventaxian calendar. Quick evacuation. Lawrence nodded. Draconian front collapsed faster than expected. They had hours, not days. They continued deeper into the facility, following the source of the energy readings to the central laboratory. The double doors parted with a hydraulic hiss that seemed unnaturally loud in the abandoned complex. Inside, a cylindrical machine dominated the center of the room, humming with power. Blue light emanated from dozens of preservation chambers arranged in concentric circles. Each contained plant specimens suspended in transparent gel. Petra moved to the control interface, her fingers flying across the Ventaxian symbols. "Preservation system," she explained. "Automatic function, still running." She pointed to specific chambers. "These species extinct now. Bombardment destroyed natural habitats." Lawrence examined the power consumption readouts. "This explains the energy signatures. System's been drawing from backup generators since evacuation." He left Petra cataloging the preserved specimens and made his way to the northwestern dome, where facility schematics indicated communications equipment would be located. The communications array had suffered damage. Blast impact had shattered half the transmission dishes, but the primary systems remained intact. Lawrence assessed the equipment, mentally comparing it with his partially functioning comm unit. With proper integration, he could potentially boost his unit's capabilities using the station's more sophisticated components. He began dismantling panels, extracting viable components and integrating them with his comm unit. The work required concentration, connecting microscopic filaments and rerouting power through adaptive circuits. Petra returned 2 hours later, carrying several containers. "Hydroponics section still functions," she reported, opening one container to reveal fresh vegetation. Automated systems maintained minimal growth, enough food for us. She set another container beside Lawrence. Nutrient packs, human compatible. Research included cross-species nutrition. Lawrence paused his work long enough to examine the packs. According to his scanner, they contained synthesized proteins and carbohydrates formulated for human consumption despite their Ventaxian origin. He had just finished connecting the final circuit when a sharp alarm blared through the facility. Red warning lights activated throughout the corridor. Proximity alert, Lawrence stated, immediately accessing the security terminal. External camera feeds showed a draconian scout team approaching from the eastern Ridge 6 soldiers in standard formation, each carrying advanced detection equipment. They moved with practiced precision, establishing positions around the facility's perimeter. Not random patrol, Lawrence observed, noting their equipment and communication patterns. Targeted search. Energy signatures, Petra suggested. Lawrence nodded, likely detected the preservation system. He calculated their options rapidly. His rifle and sidearm against 6 draconian soldiers equipped with combat armor presented extremely unfavorable odds. Direct confrontation would be suicidal. Environmental controls, Lawrence said suddenly, accessing the facility systems. I can reroute power. His fingers moved across the interface, redirecting energy from the sample preservation units to the outpost's external atmospheric regulators. The regulators began venting preserved research gas harmless compounds that produced significant heat and vapor signatures. On the security feed, they watched the draconian scouts react immediately to the unexpected activity. Their formation shifted, weapons raised as they retreated to establish a wider perimeter. Buying time, Lawrence explained. They'll interpret the venting as active industrial process potential threat. Standard protocol requires them to maintain distance and await reinforcements. Petra studied the facility's schematic displayed on the terminal. Lower-level access. She asked, pointing to a sealed section. Lawrence hadn't noticed it before. A laboratory area on the facility's lowest level, separated from the main research sections. The access point required biometric authentication. Worth investigating, he agreed. Might find more supplies. They took the emergency stairwell to the lowest level. The biometric scanner beside the laboratory doors remained functional, its screen displaying Ventaxian script. Requires Ventaxian signature, Lawrence observed. Petra approached the scanner, placing her palm against its surface. The device hummed, light passing beneath her skin, before the security panel shifted from red to green. The doors unlocked with a metallic click. Inside, they discovered a research space unlike the others, more compact, more organized, and distinctly protected from casual access. Displays still glowed with power, and sealed containment units lined the walls. Classified project, Lawrence noted, examining the equipment. Joint research. The evidence was clear, both Ventaxian and human technology integrated throughout the laboratory. Data displays contained dual-language notations, and equipment had been modified to accommodate both species' physiological requirements. Petra moved to a central workstation, activating its interface. Xenobiology project, she reported, scrolling through files. Cross-species medical applications, radiation treatment, toxin exposure. Lawrence's attention focused on a device positioned at the laboratory's center, a pod-like structure with neural interface connections and monitoring equipment. According to the adjacent display, it was a prototype designed to accelerate cellular regeneration. Functional, Lawrence confirmed after scanning the device. Power systems intact. He accessed the research notes, quickly assessing the documented results. The device had successfully treated chemical weapon exposure in both human and Ventaxian test subjects. His medical scanner confirmed its operational status despite being a prototype. This could treat our remaining symptoms, Lawrence said, examining the neural interfaces. Your malnutrition, my toxin damage. Duration. Petra asked. 12 hours for complete treatment. Lawrence's repaired communication array activated, intercepting encrypted transmissions. He adjusted the settings to decrypt the coalition frequencies. Coalition forces engaged, he reported after listening to the tactical updates. Major offensive 30 kilometers north, pushing back draconian positions sector-wide. That explained the draconian scout presence securing their flanks against the coalition advance. Lawrence continued monitoring the transmissions, filtering through battlefield communications until a familiar designation caught his attention. Commander Kane survived, he said, a rare hint of emotion crossing his features. He's leading a search team for missing personnel. Lawrence established a narrowband transmission channel, carefully calibrated to minimize detection risk. The connection took several minutes to secure before he could transmit their coordinates and status. Nearest extraction team is 18 hours out, he reported after receiving confirmation. Too long. Draconians won't maintain their current position that long. Petra gestured toward the regenerative device. Treatment requires 12 hours. Immobile. Lawrence nodded, considering their options. The Draconians outside would eventually investigate more aggressively or receive reinforcements. They needed an alternative exit strategy. He accessed the facility's structural schematics, searching for secondary escape routes. Near the geothermal power systems, he identified a maintenance tunnel network. Subterranean tunnels, he announced, displaying the route on the terminal. Connect to geothermal tap station 3 kilometers west, beyond draconian perimeter. The tunnel schematics showed structural damage from previous bombardments concerning but potentially navigable. If they could complete their treatment and reach the tunnels before draconian reinforcements arrived, they might escape undetected. As Lawrence calibrated the regenerative device, the proximity alarm activated again. He accessed the security feed immediately, his expression hardening. Additional draconian forces inbound, he reported. Full combat unit, mechanized armor. According to movement indicators, the reinforcements would arrive in approximately 10 hours, 12 hours before their treatment would complete, and 8 hours before coalition extraction could reach them. Impossible choice, Petra observed quietly. Abandon treatment or face capture. Lawrence continued studying the incoming data, refusing to accept either option. The regenerative device's research notes detailed its operational parameters, including experimental protocols that hadn't progressed to field testing. Petra leaned forward suddenly, pointing to a specific section of research notes. Remote operation protocol, she said. Emergency implementation. Lawrence examined the technical specifications. The researchers had developed a method for continuing treatment during patient transport, a portable configuration that maintained neural connection while allowing limited mobility. Increased risk, Lawrence noted, reading the warning notations. Reduced effectiveness. Only chance, Petra replied simply. They worked methodically, Lawrence applying his military engineering expertise, while Petra navigated the Ventaxian technological interfaces. Together, they modified the regenerative device into portable units that could maintain connection to their nervous systems through adapted neural interfaces. Dawn approached as they completed the modifications. Facility sensors indicated the draconian reinforcements were less than 4 hours away. The portable units drew power from salvaged research facility batteries, enough for several hours of continuous operation. Lawrence secured the last connection to the neural interface at the base of his skull. The sensation was uncomfortably a persistent pressure, accompanied by occasional tingling along his spine as the treatment continued. Treatment effectiveness at 60%, he noted, checking the readouts. Sufficient for survival. They gathered their supplies, including the nutrient packs and Petra's medicinal plants. The maintenance tunnel entrance required manual override. The the door grinding open to reveal a dark passage reinforced with metal support struts. Lawrence's tactical light illuminated sections where bombardment had caused partial collapse. "Stay close," he instructed, stepping into the tunnel. "Movement slow and careful." With the portable regenerative units secured to their backs and neural interfaces maintaining the medical treatment, they entered the tunnel system. Each step required careful navigation around debris and structural damage, the constant risk of collapse accompanying them as they moved deeper into the passage. 4 kilometers of unstable tunnel separated them from potential safety, with draconian forces closing in behind them and the uncertainty of what awaited ahead. The countdown displayed on Lawrence's scanner showed 3 hours until the draconian reinforcements would reach the research facility. Their modified treatment would complete in 11 hours, and coalition extraction remained 17 hours away. Lawrence activated his tactical light to maximum intensity as they descended into the darkness of the maintenance tunnels, leaving the relative safety of the research facility behind. Lawrence activated his tactical light to maximum intensity as they descended into the darkness of the maintenance tunnels, leaving the relative safety of the research facility behind. The blue glow from their neural interfaces created an eerie secondary illumination, casting shadows that danced along the corroded walls. "Watch your footing," Lawrence said, sweeping his light across the tunnel floor. Structural integrity compromised in multiple sections. The maintenance tunnels narrow, corroded passages constructed decades wound beneath the canyon floor like arteries. Lawrence took point, his tactical light revealing rusted support struts and cracked concrete ahead. The wrist-mounted scanner provided constant updates on structural integrity, vibration patterns, and potential collapse zones. Petra followed 3 paces behind, her compound eyes naturally adapting to the low light. "Support beam at your 2 o'clock shows stress fracturing," she said, identifying a danger Lawrence's human vision had missed. The portable regenerative units strapped to their backs made movement awkward. Each unit roughly the size of Lawrence's tactical helmet connected to their nervous systems through the adapted neural interfaces. The soft blue pulsing of the connection ports provided a rhythm to their careful progress. "Treatment status?" Lawrence asked, pausing to check a junction. 82%, Petra reported. "Neural connection stable." Lawrence consulted his own readout. 6 to 7% here, slower metabolism. 400 meters into their journey, Lawrence's light revealed a significant obstacle. A partial tunnel collapse had left only a narrow crawlspace through which they needed to pass. Debris from the ceiling had created a choke point barely large enough for a human body. Structural collapse consistent with orbital bombardment patterns, Lawrence assessed, examining the damage. Must navigate individually. He positioned himself flat on the ground, pushing his regenerative unit ahead while dragging himself through the gap. Sharp edges of broken concrete tore at his uniform, reopening one of his partially healed wounds. A warm trickle of blood spread across his side as he emerged on the opposite side. "Clear," he called back, setting his unit aside momentarily to help Petra. "Push your unit through first." Petra disconnected her unit temporarily, sliding it through the narrow opening. Lawrence carefully pulled it to safety before helping Petra navigate the passage herself. Her slimmer Ventaxian physiology allowed her to move through the gap with greater ease despite her weakened condition. Once through, she immediately reconnected her neural interface, wincing slightly at the sensation. "Neural connection weakening," she reported, adjusting settings on her unit. Treatment efficacy down to 78%. Lawrence checked his own readings. 6 to 3% here. We need to maintain at least 50% connection until we reach the geothermal station. He retrieved a small tool fashioned from a medical probe and made calibration adjustments to both their units, stabilizing the neural links. They continued through the tunnels for another hour, the regenerative units humming softly as they processed. Lawrence's pace remained measured, each step calculated to minimize energy expenditure while maintaining forward progress. The scanner on his wrist suddenly emitted a warning tone, stopping him mid-stride. "Critical structural failure ahead," he announced, examining the readout. 93% probability of complete collapse if we attempt passage. Petra moved beside him, surveying the tunnel junction where they'd halted. Alternative route. Lawrence accessed the facility schematics he downloaded before their departure. The image projected from his wrist device showed a glowing network of tunnels, one section flashing red to indicate the danger zone. Maintenance shaft runs parallel, adds 2 kilometers to journey. He didn't verbalize the obvious implication additional time would put them well within the window when draconian forces would completely surround the area. Petra's compound eyes reflected the blue light of her regenerative unit as she studied the ceiling. "What about that?" She pointed to a narrow utility conduit running along the roof, a tube approximately 60 centimeters in diameter designed for power cables and data lines. Lawrence directed his scanner toward the conduit. "Intact through danger zone. Not designed for personnel transport. Diameter insufficient for..." "Sufficient for Ventaxian physiology," Petra interrupted. She was already examining the access panel to the conduit. "I can navigate it and secure the tunnel support struts from the other side with the repair kit we salvaged." Lawrence shook his head immediately. "Negative. Treatment incomplete. Disconnecting regenerative unit now could reverse progress." 8 minutes, Petra countered, her slender fingers already working to detach her neural interface. Research data showed Ventaxian physiology can maintain treatment cellular memory for up to 12 minutes between connection sessions. I need 8 to reach the other side and stabilize the tunnel. Before Lawrence could formulate further objections, his scanner emitted another warning. Vibrations from the surface indicated draconian ground transport moving into position above them. The debate ended instantly. Lawrence helped Petra temporarily disconnect her regenerative unit, securing it with straps from his tactical vest. He attached a biomonitor to her wrist, synchronizing it with his scanner. 8 minutes, he confirmed. Reconnection protocol prepared to minimize cellular regression. Petra climbed into the utility conduit with surprising agility. Her slender form navigated the narrow space with fluid grace, disappearing into the darkness. Lawrence watched the biomonitor on his scanner, tracking her vital signs as the minutes passed with excruciating slowness. At the 6-minute mark, his scanner detected structural reinforcement activating on the far side of the weakened tunnel. Petra had reached her destination and begun repairs. Lawrence observed the structural integrity readings shift from critical to stable at 7 minutes and 42 seconds. 18 seconds later, Petra emerged from a maintenance hatch in the floor beyond the danger zone, her iridescent skin noticeably paler from the brief treatment interruption. Lawrence moved immediately to help her reconnect to the regenerative unit. His medical scanner confirmed she experienced only minimal cellular regression within acceptable parameters according to the research data. "Structural support stabilized," Petra reported, her breathing labored. "Path clear." They continued through the no-reinforced tunnel section, moving faster as Lawrence's tactical scanner indicated the draconian forces had established a perimeter directly above the research facility. His jury-rigged communicator occasionally caught fragments of coalition communications, confirming extraction teams were rerouting to avoid draconian detection. After nearly 3 hours of traversing the underground network, Lawrence detected a change in air quality. Fresh air flowed from a vertical shaft, geothermal tap station's ventilation system. The station, built to harness heat from Ares IV's magma chambers, had been abandoned simultaneously with the research outpost, but operated on independent systems. Lawrence checked his scanner. No draconian presence detected. Enemy forces concentrated around main research facility. The ventilation shaft presented a new challenge. Lawrence assessed the vertical climb while considering the limitations imposed by their regenerative units. Using his tactical webbing, he fashioned a harness system creating a counterweight arrangement that would allow them to ascend while maintaining their neural connections. "Fordamter climb," he stated, securing the first anchor point, "will require multiple rest periods to maintain treatment stability." The ascent proved arduous. Lawrence climbed first, establishing secure points for Petra to follow. They stopped 3 times to readjust their equipment and verify treatment progress. By the time they reached surface level, Lawrence's scanner showed both treatments had progressed to nearly 80% completion, sufficient to ensure survival but not optimal for long-term recovery. The geothermal station consisted of 3 utilitarian buildings surrounding a central core, extending deep into the planet's crust. Unlike the research facility, the station showed no combat damage, only the effects of abandonment. Desert dust had infiltrated through deteriorated seals, creating drifts against interior walls and coating control consoles with a fine reddish powder. Lawrence secured the perimeter while Petra located the station's communication array, a robust system designed to maintain contact even during electromagnetic storms. Working together, they bypassed dormant security protocols and accessed emergency power reserves. With the communication system operational, Lawrence established contact with coalition forces using his identification codes. The response came almost immediately, the voice unmistakable despite static interference. "Damn good to hear your voice, Doc," Commander Kane said, using Lawrence's field nickname. "Extraction team is 30 minutes out, but we're reading draconian patrol activity in your sector. Can you maintain position?" "Affirmative," Lawrence responded, checking the station's structural integrity. "Defensible position, completing medical treatment. Request silent approach protocol." "Understood, Kane out." Lawrence turned to Petra, who monitored their regenerative units during the communication. 86% completion, she reported, adjusting a calibration dial. "Station power reserves allowing faster processing than portable batteries." They established a defensive position in the station's monitoring room, a space with armored windows providing clear sightlines while remaining obscured from external view. Lawrence distributed his remaining supplies, creating improvised early warning devices at key entry points. Petra, moving with increased strength, helped fortify their position using maintenance tools from the station's equipment lockers. 22 minutes into their wait, Lawrence's motion detector activate movement at the perimeter fence 300 meters east of their position. Through his tactical scope, he identified a draconian scout drone performing a standard sweep pattern. "Drone will detect our position in 3 minutes, Lawrence stated, calculating its flight path. "Options limited.